In an atmosphere clouded not only by rain, which has been falling for nigh on 30 days, but by politics, which have been raining on the sport since its inception, real life returns 6,000 feet up at Kyalami. Despite politics, the race, the rain, and the risks are real. Just yesterday, Carlos Reutemann went out into this same rain and wound up with catch fencing around his neck and windpipe, thus coming as close to strangling as you can. Up front, waiting in the rain, are some familiar faces. Nelson Piquet of Brazil from Brabham is on pole, with Carlos Reutemann alongside him. And then some less familiar faces. Keke Rosberg, the Finn, driving for Fittipaldi. Elio De Angelis, who has taken over the number 1 drive for Lotus after Andretti's moved to Alfa Romeo. And Riccardo Patrese, driving for Arrows. Not far behind on the grid, Nigel Mansell of England in the 2nd Lotus. And Ricardo Zanino of Argentina, lying 7th on the grid, showing the Brabhams are still competitive even in the hands of lesser drivers. As they line up for the start, the big gamble has to be tyres, a bet against the weather. Will the track dry out? Will there be more rain? Do I go out on slicks or wets? Significantly, just 2 drivers opt for slicks, Reutemann and Rosberg. Just what the decision means is obvious from the start. Visibility is near 0, except for Nelson Piquet, who goes off fast and first. The rest, and watch the young Dutch driver Jan Lammers come charging up along the outside, can see next to nothing. John Watson can see nothing. He's caught in the wake of Alan Jones, nicely shut off at the first curve by Lammers. Lammers is having his moment of glory, but soon finds out how fleeting it is. But it's not going to be an easy race for anyone. The cars are trying to walk on water. The only real surprise is that Elio De Angelis, not so far a wet weather specialist, should be staying right up there with the front runners. Piquet seems to be running away with the race, building to his lead without challenge. But the rain has gone. There are bits of dry track and Piquet's on wet tyres. Jeff Lees has his little appointment with the catch fences. Equally unlucky is the world champion, who comes in to change to slicks. He goes off, but he is soon to be back in again. The Australian is far from happy. Nelson Piquet, meanwhile, comes into the pits to change his tyres. And John Watson inherits the lead, the first time in some years that he's led a race. Like so many moments of glory, it doesn't last long. He too has to change his tyres. And that leaves the wily old fox, Carlos Reutemann, in the lead. He, it will be remembered, started out on slicks in the first place and just hung back until the track dried. Riccardo Patrese's Arrows is taken with consummate ease. And a few laps later, Watson is left. Behind Reutemann's Williams in the closing stages are the early leader, Nelson Piquet, who can't quite catch up, Elio De Angelis in his Lotus, and the surprising Keke Rosberg in the all-new white Fittipaldi, who doesn't seem very willing to let Carlos by. As For Frank Williams, whose cars are starting 1981 in much the same all-conquering spirit as in 1980, he doesn't look all that overjoyed. Maybe because his world champion made a series of wrong guesses. As for the Argentine driver, who would know from his expression that he's just won a Grand Prix? He even leaves it to Elio De Angelis to do the ritual bit with the champagne. Maybe he knows that the result... Something he will definitely not be after Brazil, where the man he thought of as his chief rival, Nelson Piquet, is on pole position. A good place to be on a wet and uncomfortable day. With his teammate Reutemann second on the grid, Jones must have felt in with a chance. The more so seeing Piquet out on slicks. With his back wheels spinning, Piquet is left standing. And it's Reutemann, Jones and Patrese. Chico Serra was soon out of it, so were Arnoux and Andretti at the start. And Villeneuve, who had hit Prost in the same early pile-up, was clearly not going to last long. Up front, Reutemann and Jones were running clear, safe as houses. But behind, Pironi was taking up the challenge for Ferrari. A lap behind Prost, he decides to let the Renault driver by, forgetting the outside is one big puddle. Out they go. Nearer the front, John Watson of McLaren and Marc Surer of Enzyme, with Jean-Pierre Jarier behind them, are having a ding-dong. Two super wet race drivers and lots of hairy moments. Until, almost inevitably, it goes wrong. For Watson. Graceful, but off the track. After his terrible start, Piquet was working his way back to respectability, showing the stuff of which champions are made. De Angelis, Surer and Lafitte take each other on. And Piquet battles past Alboreto. While Reutemann and Jones are strolling in the rain, there is drama in the pits. The world champion has no reason to push Reutemann. He's his number 2 after all. That's in the contract. And Frank Williams has shown Carlos the board, which Carlos doesn't see. Maybe it's the umbrellas. But regardless, win Reutemann does. So that when the race is over, it's a fairly lonely walk for Carlos. And on the podium it is Riccardo Patrese finishing 3rd, who sprays the champagne. Of Jones, no sign, and Reutemann does not look overjoyed.